190,000 garments get produced every minute. 12 tons of plastic get produced every second. And some people are making a lot of money off of this. But is this actually sustainable? And that's the whole point of Buy Now, the new documentary that's out on Netflix. And I wanted to talk about it and give you kind of my perspective as an entrepreneur and as an environmentalist. Let's get right into it. I would be lying if I said I didn't cry during this documentary. I did, and I did several times. And my anxiety was at an all-time high while watching this documentary. So in case you don't want to go through that, I have kind of a summary of the documentary today and also my perspective as an entrepreneur and as an environmentalist. So I invite you to hang out with me for the next whatever amount of minutes, and we'll talk about this new documentary and kind of unpack. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? My name is Maricruz. I'm an engineer, environmentalist, and entrepreneur. And in this channel, I show you how to grow your side business while still working full-time and doing it in a sustainable and balanced way. And today is a little different. Today is a reaction video or reflection video on the new documentary that just came out on Netflix called Buy Now. It's pretty popular, which makes me happy because people need to know about these things that are happening in our consumeristic society. So I'm excited to dive in. The documentary was split up in 5 parts. Basically, it was this creepy AI girl, Sasha, which I think it was an interesting approach. It was kind of creepy. I thought it was creepy, but again, AI in general is a little... So Sasha is walking us through as if we were big corporations trying to make more money and teaching us how to do so. And so it was kind of an interesting approach, but I'm going to go through the 5 parts as well and kind of give you a summary and reflection on each part so that it kind of flows the same way as the documentary did. The 5 parts were 1, sell more, 2, waste more, 3, lie more, 4, hide more, and then 5, control more. So those were the 5 things. We're gonna dive right into them. And at the end, there was a little bit of hope, you could say, in the documentary. So we'll talk about that. Make sure you grab your cafecito or your tea or whatever you like to drink, maybe some wine, because these are kind of sad facts that I'm gonna spit at you, so grab whatever you think you need to watch this video. Okay, so the first part was to sell more, and this is exactly when anxiety kicked in because they started giving us a bunch of different statistics on how much money different corporations are making and all of the psychology that goes into marketing for these companies and how they're literally playing us like puppets. And throughout this section, they were really highlighting different like influencers, like on TikTok doing like Shein hauls or Shein, whatever, Amazon hauls, and like just the hauls on Instagram and TikTok. And I don't follow any of these people. So then to me, like seeing that was super shocking, even though I know like these things are happening, you know, but I'm not in it. So that was super shocking to me. I don't know if it will be for you as well, but these videos of people doing $500 Shein hauls and there's like boxes and boxes and boxes of things. And I was just like, is this real? Like, how did we get here? And the crazy part here, they were going through fast fashion and they were showing like, you know, how many garments each fast fashion corporation was making a year. And, you know, you had H&M a little lower and Zara. And then you got Shein creating like, I forget the number, but it was millions of garments a month. And in my head, I'm just like, who is buying these things? I don't understand. Like who, there's not enough, who, I feel like an owl. There are not enough people on the planet to buy. Like even if each one of us bought a garment, there would be too many garments. That was my initial reaction. But it was kind of funny because as an entrepreneur, I also kind of thought, what is Shein and what are like Amazon and Zara and all these companies doing to sell more? Because for me, I'm running a sustainable business, sunscreen business, but I also would like to know how to get into people's minds and really connect with the consumer on that level where they just buy whatever you put out, right? So that was interesting because, I mean, we live in a capitalistic society, right? And as a business owner, the purpose of my business is to sell, right? Is to sell more. So this one was a little interesting because I found myself also kind of analyzing what was happening, and why consumers were really into all these brands, because they also talked about Apple a lot and like how fanatic people are around Apple, right? And so it doesn't matter what they launch, there's lines at the door, right? So it's interesting if you also are a business owner to watch this and see like, okay, if the big corporations are doing it, could there be a way to make people want to support small businesses more? Like get into the psyche as well, but for a good cause. Like, I'm not sure if this is doable or if it would be sustainable at the end of the day. But those were just thoughts that were coming up to my mind. And as an environmentalist, I mean, I just cried, right? So like, it's crazy that that amount of production is going on, and it's just so sad, right? Because I don't think that most people are out here buying stuff because they're evil, right? Like, it's not the consumer. But I do think that a lot of people are ignorant as in where these purchases go after they make them, after they're done with it, and they throw them away. That was another key concept here in this section, is that when you're throwing away, you're not throwing it away, and away does not exist. It's still on this planet, right? So they showed a lot about, for example, for fashion, they went hard on the fashion, I think, in this whole documentary. But when you think about fast fashion, they showed in Ghana, like the beaches are full of clothes because Western countries send them to developing countries for them to deal with it. And it's our stuff, but they're dealing with it. And sometimes they don't have the resources to deal with them. So they end up in just the beaches, in the streets, they end up burning them or whatever they can to deal with this whole crisis, right, of fast fashion. So as an environmentalist, it was just sad to see it, because I know it's happening, but it was sad to see it. What was cool about the AI person, Sasha, is that she was creating these images and these videos from AI. She would say things like, visualize 190,000 garments being produced each minute. Or visualize 12 tons of plastic being produced every second. And you would have the plastic and the garments coming out of like the windows of buildings and like on the streets. And like, it was a really crazy visual that I think they did really well, because you had like somebody working on the computer and then things coming in from the windows of just stuff that's being produced. So that was pretty cool. Part 2 was waste more. And this one really is getting at planned obsolescence. And this is something that companies do in order to sell more things, right? So if you haven't heard of planned obsolescence, it's basically when an item, an object, is designed to fail quicker than it could have. So they gave an example of the very first like recorded planned obsolescence design, and that was for a light bulb back in 1925. They basically said, wow, like these light bulbs are really lasting years and years and years. So then people are not needing to buy more light bulbs. So really it wasn't a good business model. So then they were like, let's just make it so that instead of lasting 5,000 hours, let's make it so it only lasts 1,000. And that way they break more often, or stop breaking more often. and they have to buy more. Makes sense as a business person, but you're also creating more and more waste, right? Because now you have to throw away those light bulbs more often. Fast forward to today, and you have a lot of the big tech people doing this on electronics. And electronics are particularly more sad because they have hazardous chemicals inside. So when you throw it away, right, they are going to, again, third world countries or to the landfill and creating runoff of these toxic chemicals that are literally harming people's health and the environments that they end up running off to. My first reaction to this was remembering when I finally got all the money that I could to get an iPod, like one of those little finger. I'll try to find a picture and put it here. It didn't have a screen. It didn't have anything. Yes, I'm that old. And then when I had it for a few years, and then I couldn't update it. So they had like a software update, and I was like, cool, I'll do it. And I couldn't update it. They're like, oh no, we don't do that anymore for the older models. So then I couldn't use it anymore. Like it just stopped working. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Another example is how they stopped having aux jacks on the phone. So you can't plug in your earphones. Now you have to use the AirPods, which they talked about AirPods and just Bluetooth earphones. Yeah. The things you put in your ear. They talked about that as well, how you can't fix them, right? So now you not only can you not use the headphones that had wires to connect, but you can't fix the AirPods once something goes wrong, right? So as a business model, okay, so as an entrepreneur, it's like, that's kind of clever. I'm going to give you something. Let's take the example of AirPods. I'm going to give you something that I designed to fail in a year. So the battery will no longer work in a year. And then when you go and try to replace that battery, you can't. Okay? So you can't, which means you have to throw this away and buy new ones. Genius. Genius business model. I agree. But as far as a sustainability model, the worst. The worst. So as an environmentalist, I felt so, what's the word? I felt so duped. Is that a word? If not, I made it up. But you know what I mean. Like, oof, they got me good, right? Because I just bought, probably like 3 months ago, I bought some Bluetooth earphones, headphones, whatever, because when I'm working in the lab at my full-time job, I don't want any wires like in between me and my phone. So I bought those because they're super convenient, right? But now I know it's just a matter of time that they're gonna break and the battery's not gonna work and it's not gonna charge anymore and I'm gonna have to buy a new one. Anyway, that's the life we're living in. And it is very sad. So in general, as consumers, we're being forced to buy new products with this planned obsolescence design. And not only with planned obsolescence, but also just in the marketing of things, we're being forced to buy the new, the greatest, the best, right? Like I think the iPhone 16 just came out. It's just the same. It's the same as the other iPhone. I don't understand. But it's out. It's new. It has AI, whatever. And people are in line buying it, right? Because we don't want to feel left out. We don't want to feel like we're, behind. This is where they introduce an influencer called the Trash Talker. I would suggest following her. I'm following her now. And she basically looks at the trash that corporations produce, and she often goes dumpster diving at the back of the factories and finds like perfectly good new things in the trash. especially with like high-end brands, not just in fashion, but in tech as well. And she talks about how this really blew my mind, and I think it's gonna blow your mind. There are high-end brands for fashion that when they have a surplus of something, let's say for example, bags, and this is like Gucci and Louis Vuitton and Prada and those types of brands, they literally make their employees slash, like with a knife, slash the bags and then throw them out so that nobody can go and just grab them from the dumpster and like not pay for them. And to me, that was insane. Bath and Body Works also had a similar thing where they made employees squeeze out shampoo and soap and stuff because they had found that when they throw away brand new filled stuff, they had unhoused people go through their dumpsters and find shampoo and soap and things. And the manager or whatever was saying that they didn't want to be the homeless body care company. So then they made employees squeeze out bottles of soap, and it's just, I don't get it. I don't get it. So then there's all this waste produced, right? Just because of the brand. And because, I don't even know. I don't know. I have no excuses for them. This is yet another place where I cried, especially the Bath and Body Works one. I'm just like, let them have some soap, you know? Like, donate that to shelters. Like, there's just so many things you could do other than throwing and squeezing out the soap in the trash. One last thing on this. If I had a dime for every time I heard, oh, don't worry, I'm just ordering this, but then whatever I don't use, I'm going to return. Especially talking about Amazon. Returns are not okay. Okay, I don't know what you think, and I'm glad they touched on this because everybody thinks, oh, I'll just return it and then they'll resell it. No, it doesn't work like that. A lot of the times it's more expensive to put it back up for sale and sell it than it is to just throw it away. So you have companies like Amazon throwing thousands of things away because it's cheaper to dispose of them than to resell them. This happens also with different stores, not just Amazon. So if your approach, and I'm not blaming you, I'm just trying to give my 2 cents. If your approach to shopping is usually buying a bunch of stuff and then returning what you don't need, try to minimize that as much as possible, please. And part 3 is lie more. And I think this is the most shocking part of this whole part, is that recycling is a lie. And again, as an environmentalist, that's something I already knew. But they lay it out pretty well. Like, they make this little flow chart of like, okay, you throw whatever away in the recycling bin and then it goes to fire or it goes to landfill or it goes to a third world country. And it really lays it out for you. Even the in-store recycling that I personally do, right? If I have any soft plastics, I save them and I take them to Target and put them in their soft plastic recycling. That's all a lie. And again, super sad that that's the state that we're in. But it is important to recognize, because this recycling myth is what gives a lot of people hope, and it like makes us feel better as consumers, right? Of like, oh yeah, this comes in a plastic bottle, but I can recycle it, so it's not that bad. Only 10% of stuff actually gets recycled, and it's not the stuff that you think gets recycled. So really, here as an environmentalist, I already knew these things. So what I took from it is that really it's difficult to be a consumer, and it's really not on us to change this. That's what I took from it, right? You have Coca-Cola, you have Unilever producing the most amount of plastic that any other companies in the world, and they should be responsible for it, not us. I've said it before and I'll say it again a million times. And the main thing about the recycling thing is that we can't recycle our way out of this waste problem. And I think that's really important to recognize because, you know, if you have, what's that metaphor? There's a metaphor about a sink, a clogged sink, and the sink is on and it's overflowing, right? And there's water all over the floor. What is the first thing that you do? You turn off the faucet. If you're smart. I'm just kidding. You turn off the faucet. You gotta stop the problem from the root before you try to address. You're not gonna start cleaning the floor, right? When bringing towels and cleaning the floor because the water's still coming, right? So that's kind of the idea here of like, hey, recycling is not gonna save us. It's cool. It's an important part of it, but it's not gonna save us. Another concept that's covered in this part is greenwashing, and I have a whole workshop and video on it, so I'll link that here. But greenwashing is basically when corporations are saying they're green when they're not. So, for example, Coca-Cola saying that, you know, our caps have 30% less plastic, and it's like, oh, good job, but you're the #1 plastic producer in the world, that kind of thing, right? Or H&M having an eco-friendly line where just one of their fashion lines has recycled polyester or something like that. Or their take back program of like, oh, come recycle your clothes with us and then buy more, get 50% off the next purchase. Greenwashing, avoid at all cost. And the fourth part was hide more. Hide more as in like, let's not let the consumer know what we're up to. Hide from the consumer how to repair their own shit. So this was a lot for tech, right? There was this guy that has, I think it's called I Can Fix It is his company, and he just fixes all kinds of gadgets and electronics. And basically he was saying that companies are making it harder and harder and harder to repair these electronics. And again, it goes back to the business model, right? You want them to come to you to try to repair them and then tell them, oof, we can't, and then have to buy a new one. So this guy repairs everything, and like, he's cool. You can find his website too, icanfixit.com, I think. Basically, this hide more mentality is, again, to help the corporation make the consumer buy more, right? So everything kind of like ties back to point one, right? So you do all these things so that you buy more. And in this part, they introduced the James Bond of waste. It's this super cool dude. I'll try to find a picture because I think looking at him is also cool. Like, it's just this old guy that wants to do better, right? And so he is kind of like a James Bond because he puts trackers on electronics and then drops them off at different recyclers of electronics, or different box stores that say they recycle electronics, and then follows that GPS around that tracker to see where it ends up. And usually it ends up somewhere in Thailand or in Asia, somewhere in Asia. And at like these facilities that have no health regulations or anything, you have people just with like regular cloth masks handling these hazardous materials. You have people burning these things, and like, it's just really sad to look at because, like he says, like, there's no such thing as throwing away. Like, away is actually a country and a place where people are trying to do their best to deal with this e-waste. And so I also cried in this part. I pretty much cried in every part. This one was really hard for me to watch just because these toxic electronics Like they're killing people, right? They're killing people, and this is something that I use every day, right? I use a laptop for my full-time job. I use a laptop for Menos Waste and for Sunmud. I use my phone every single day. I use computers. I have a microphone. I have all these electronics, right? And just to think of me having that impact on the world, that negative impact on the world really made me sad. And so obviously as an environmentalist, I try to buy everything secondhand, to not create more demand for electronics. Like this was secondhand, my phone was secondhand, and my tripod and everything is secondhand. So, and honestly, as an entrepreneur, I think that's the best that we can do, because there's no way in today's modern world to run a company without using electronics. Of course, you don't have to have the latest and greatest, and that's how I cope with it, right? I buy secondhand. I have the older models of every gadget pretty much, but they work, right? So as a business owner, that's something to always keep in mind. And to be a more sustainable business owner, that's what I do. I buy secondhand, I buy older models, and try not to increase the demand for more electronics. And I think it was the I Can Fix It guy that said it best towards the end of his segment. He just said, just fucking stop. That's what he said. And that's what I wanted to say this whole time. Like, to companies, to consumers, to everybody, just fucking stop buying shit, right? And I just cussed a lot. But it's because this gets me really angry. But yeah, obviously we have to buy stuff. As a business owner, I buy a lot of stuff for my business. And obviously we can't just fucking stop, but we can definitely slow down, you know? And part 5 was control more. And the example they gave here was of Amazon and how they were trying to control their employees to not think about sustainability and not think about the impact that the company is having on the planet. And they talked about how they tried to unionize, and they created this group about like more eco-friendly Amazon employees, and trying to really push Jeff Bezos to create a climate plan because of like employees realizing how much of an effect Amazon has, right? And so basically Jeff Bezos fired the girl. I don't know if it was him, you know, but she got fired, the one that was organizing everything. And that's what this part is trying to get at, right? Like if you're trying to be successful, big, huge corporation, then you have to control more. And you have to control your employees first, and then the rest of the population, right? So this one was a little weird, also kind of creepy. I didn't cry on this one, but a big thing that they were trying to get at here is to stop blaming the consumer, because there's a lot of other things at play, right, that we don't see, that corporations are controlling us. And so it's not really like our fault in a way. I feel a certain way about that. But one more thing about part 5 as an entrepreneur is that this could also be used positively on a more sustainable side. And we do so at Sunmud, right? All of our employees not only are working for a sustainable brand, but we hold them to higher expectations. So whenever we're working, even with brand ambassadors, for example, we're like, we don't want you doing unsustainable stuff because you're representing the brand. So like even little things like water bottles, right? Like if you are out hiking and you're doing some promotion for Sunmud, we don't want you drinking from a water bottle, a plastic water bottle. Bringing your reusable one. Like we don't want you promoting other brands that are not sustainable, right? Of like fast fashion or something like that. Like you have to be aligned. And so in a way, we're controlling our employees, but I think in a positive way. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you have employees as well, I think that's a good way to look at this advice of controlling more in order to be more profitable. So at the end, they did provide some hope, sort of. Like I felt like this needed a lot more in it, because they didn't really give us tools to do better. Like the hope part was just that we have the power to buy less, which is true, but then like it kind of left me hanging, you know? Like, yes, they gave a few examples of how innovation is helping, and we're coming up with these new solutions and improving recycling and all these things, but at the end of the day, they just said we have to buy less, which is a solution, but it wasn't very like tangible. Like I would have liked to see, hey, if Americans would buy half as much as they currently do, this is what it would do to the demand or to carbon emissions or to waste. There was no like direct, you know? I don't know if that makes sense. But basically, at the end, they were like, just buy less shit, which I totally agree with. I always try to shop secondhand wherever I can. And I always promote doing that for anything, like even like personal stuff and also for your business. So now my problem with this documentary is that overall, the overarching theme, obviously the name is Buy Now. So the overarching theme was for us as consumers to buy less, which I don't like. But they also did a great job to illustrate and really visualize or help us visualize how much stuff is out there and how much is produced. So I like that aspect, because that did put a lot of blame on the corporations and a lot of blame on like the science of marketing and how we're being manipulated. So I do think that was great. I just wish there was a lot more corporate responsibility, right? Of like, okay, so how do we make corporations take action and take responsibility for what they are causing? Another thing that I really liked was that they had real people that used to work for these corporations and used to be responsible for this mass production, right? And this mass consumption. And all of them were, you know, obviously arrepentidos. How do you say arrepentidos in English? They regretted what they did. And so that was another place where I cried, because I think it was the Adidas brand manager or something that was just saying that, just thinking about all of the stuff that he's responsible for of being out in the world and contaminating our world really like hurts him. And like, oof, I can only imagine, you know, like he was responsible for a lot of waste. And so that was cool, like to see people kind of going back and reflecting and admitting that what the companies they worked for are doing to the world and to the planet. This was a much longer video than I was expecting, but I do think that as entrepreneurs, we have to understand this concept of us creating products is gonna lead to waste, right? And taking this information and trying to do our best to be on the positive side of that impact is important. And that's what I preach here at Menos Waste, is to build your business, you know, to give you that freedom and that liberation, but also keep the planet in mind. Keep the people and the planet, because it's always tied together, right? You're doing bad for the planet, you're doing bad for people. And like there's no disconnecting those two. And so I invite you as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, to try to keep in mind always that we are connected, right? And that everything that you put out has a consequence, and being responsible for that consequence is what makes you a good entrepreneur. All right, so I would suggest you go watch the documentary because just the visualization of everything was really well done, even though it was creepy. But yeah, if you have time, watch it. If not, you watch this video, and if you're still here, wow. I would love to hear from you. If you agree with me with some of these things, leave it down in the comments and we can start a conversation, because that's what we need. We need community. We need to start a conversation and talk about these things instead of just trying to hide them under the rug, right? Anyway, I do videos not like this. Actually, I do videos about helping you grow your side business while you're still working full-time. I do videos about helping you grow your small business on the side while still working full-time and doing it in a sustainable way. So subscribe to the channel if you are into that, or if you're in the middle of doing that. I am here to be helpful, so I hope you stick around. I think you would enjoy this video next, but if not, I will see you next week. Until then, don't forget, Poquito goes a long way. Ciao!